I'm Dr. Pete Economo, the East Coast psychologist.
And I'm Dr. Nikki Rubin, the West Coast psychologist.
And this is When East
Meets West.
Well, it has been quite some time, but there is no time like this moment for the return, Dr. Nikki.
As
I forgot that I don't call you Dr. Nikki.
I was like, sure, you can call me Dr. Nikki.
Yeah.
Make something new.
Yeah,
much longer hiatus than we anticipated.
Well, that's life, isn't it?
It is. Well, and I think, this is where, it's funny, like for anybody that's listening that, thinks about like when you get away from something, it's like, oh, I got away from it. I can't do it anymore. And that's kind of like, what, Pete and I would talk about this because we were thinking, well, like that's kind of what our jam is. That's kind of what mindfulness is that you get away from something, you get off track, and you can always come back. You can always return, like it doesn't. So almost a year of no episodes, but here we are,
It is almost a year. It'll probably by the time we get all the editing done and which is not too much for the listeners, just so you know.
Yes,
there's not a ton of editing. We are very just in the moment, candid, and like improv to the point where, but we want to try and make sure that, because I've missed you. I mean, we still talk, obviously.
Yes, obviously. Yes.
But it was really nice being able to connect like this, so I think we may have found a compromise. Perhaps so for the listeners, we're trying with a new compromise, which is, changing up the cadence, changing up the location, geography, things like that sort of flow, flexibility, and hoping that we can get some more content out there, because this is something that still aligns with our values.
Absolutely. And and obviously we're just kind of, reconnecting today, I would say, with some of the I was about to say focuses, the foci, right? I never like that word.
I never like it. Doesn't make sense.
I don't know.
But see, you're smart in grammar, so that's why you would even know that. Most of us wouldn't even know that. Yeah.
But I think if I said focuses, it's like that doesn't sound.
It's like a tongue twister.
It sounds weird. So I don't know. Okay, it's some of the themes. Let me say that some of the themes of this podcast, and so like what you're talking about too is like the workability of things, and Pete and I, like everybody, right? Like we like get away from stuff, and the podcast honestly was something that, as much as we love doing it and have loved doing it, we both, just with things going on in our personal lives and professional lives, we were frankly just like too busy, and every time we wanted to connect, we actually wanted to just like catch up as friends.
You mean like the hour and a half that we've done before, just clicking record?
Correct. We were like, we didn't feel like talking about psychology, and and then I say that just to be really genuine here, that again, like sometimes we don't feel like doing things that maybe do align with our values, and that's okay.
That is okay.
And why do we call this episode The Return? Coming back to what I was saying a moment ago, is that whenever you're off track from a direction you want to go, you can always choose to reroute and come back. And in mindfulness, and very literally like in meditation, that is what you're doing. Like your brain is going to go somewhere else. Like that is what it's supposed to do. That's not you doing mindfulness wrong. That's you being a human. But the return back to the moment is always available. And I think that's just a helpful thing that, at least for myself, I need to constantly reconnect to and remind myself about, because it is easy to kind of say, like, I don't know, am I really am I really going to go back and do this? I don't know. I'm busy. Like, I don't know. But here we are doing another episode.
I mean, you called me a beautiful bulldozer before, or what'd you call me?
I did. When we were just having a regular catch up, I called Pete my beautiful bulldozer.
So I don't think I've bulldozed you, but I certainly have been a bit assertive, and our producers would be so mad at us if they existed for us.
if they were real,
maybe they would keep us on track, and the hour and a half would have been a lot of good content.
That would have been a lot of content.
But you're absolutely, when you sit and meditate, one of the things that people always say to me that I love correcting is that there is no blankness. There's no nothingness. There is no silence. And that's why, like, Eckhart Tolle, one of his books is Silence Speaks. So when you sit, it's loud. And as you sit over time, you learn how to control the volume, and you can lower the volume, but there'll always be something there, you know. And so that's what we're doing now. We're returning to this thing that in all fairness, I love a little bit more than you do. And and that's okay.
Well, that's not totally true. I would say it's more that you know, Pete does. I just get very tired. You know me. I'm just. Pete doesn't like that I say this, but I mean it as a compliment to myself. I say I'm very lazy on the inside, which what I mean by that, I don't mean it in the judgment sense. I mean it that I just love like hanging out. I just like I like sitting. I like being still. I like not talking.
Well, we also talked about our different beaches, because I went to did you go to the beach? You went to the beach this weekend, probably, because you live right by the beach.
I did not, because it's been raining.
Oh, that's right.
I did not. Yeah.
But the West Coast needs some rain, so we're thankful.
Yeah, we need it. So we're grateful about it. Exactly. Yeah.
But me going to the beach today was a little different than the West Coast beach, even with the rain, because it was cold. But it's so nice when you can still go. I mean, it's one of my favorite things to do on the East Coast, where you're able to listen to the beach, listen to the sound of the ocean, still feel that salty air, which is so healthy for you. I left saying, why am I not doing this more often? And I was so thankful that we've been able to do that twice in the last few weeks. And bring the dogs there, let them run around, and it's been great. So coming back to all those things that are important to us, and it's okay that when East meets West is just slightly more important to me than it is to you.
Oh, that's gonna be laugh the rest of the day. It's I mean, again, to be fair, it's not so much that it's that it comes. I think it's a good example of there's certain things that feel like harder for different people, and so that's another like concept with the return. So for me, this is something that I personally find it difficult to make space for. Not because I don't like doing it, because I do really like doing it. It does really align with my values. I love talking to Pete. And you know, like I'm a human, so my brain's gonna want to.
You work a lot.
Yeah, too. I work a lot, and but it's also that, you know, it's easy to get in our routines, and this is also important. This concept of the return is that, you know, I'm always like talking about with patients, like, you know, brains can get rigid about anything, even values, and so you might, like, my brain might go like, well, I want to prioritize this one value over this other one, and so, you know, Pete gave me an opportunity to think about, like, you know, to pause and say, is this something that I want to return back to? Right. Which, to be clear, we don't have to return back to everything, right? Like sometimes we can just totally change direction, and that's okay too. Right. But in this context, it's about, you know, for me at least, was about saying, is this something that aligns, that feels right, that is a place that I want to move back towards, even though it feels hard, even though we got away from that. And again, our listeners are probably going like, this is a lot of conversation about why you're coming back to this podcast. but I hope those that are listening are understanding sort of the point that we're trying to make, which is that this is just how things are in life. That we get away from things that are helpful or important to us, and we then forget that we have the option to return. And so it's like there's always, like, you can always come back. That's the thing. It's like a beautiful realization when you connect to that truth, but we've got to sometimes be reminded about that. Well,
thank you for that, because that's you're also modeling. So like you said, listeners might be like, what the heck, like why am I tuning in for this? It's modeling that, you know, we're human. And so, you know, how has the last few, you know, months been for you? I know you're like teaching and practice and all this stuff going on, so you're just you know, balancing all that out, or what?
Yeah, I think it's just been, you know, I think like with everything, for everybody, it's like, it's just busy, but like, you know, at least for my life, like some very good busy things, but also busy nonetheless. And I think that's also important to say, is that sometimes you know, we often talk about when things are really hard and the stress that creates, but like when things are actually like nice, or like happy things are happening, or good things are going on, that's also stress. It's just like things, you know. So it's, I think the point being is that life is just like, there's just like stuff, like, you know what I mean? And
lots of stuff.
There's just stuff.
Well, in the East, what we focus on is that there's stuff which is pain, and we don't have to suffer, you know. And I think that has been something I've just been reminding myself of lately, as well as just, you know, clients, that we're always going to have challenges, but the idea of suffering. And so when you come to the cushion for meditation, you're really trying to build a relationship with the pain. You know, like it's one of the things, like kind of nuances, like leaning into the pain, you know, growth, which we've talked about. I wanted to also just like reference season 2, I think episode 2, we talked about beginner's mind, which is what return feels like to me a little bit.
100%. I mean, it's what, I mean, beginner's mind is, I was just talking about the other day with some students, actually, it's like remains one of my favorite concepts personally. Like I really hook into that. And it is about the return, because it's like coming, well, it's sort of dialectical, right? Because it's like coming back to something as if it's new.
Yes, exactly.
You know,
beautiful. Coming back as if this is new, you know, and our friendship's not new, our connection's not new, but we return to it to say, is there something, you know, something that we can keep building to disseminate this information and really just help people grow, because there's so much out there. You know, I think the other thing, at least for me in the past few months, is that there's definitely the post-COVID thing is happening. You know, I think that we don't know exactly what it is, but everyone's seeing it, like whether it's like on a flight where the people are acting, you know, differently now still. There's just this thing, you know, you're seeing like high school kids that are just, you know, getting in trouble maybe than they would not have in the past, or there's this post-COVID thing.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think just because, you know, there's been some unbelievably major like disruptions, you know, I mean, I think it's like an understatement of the year, but the best way I guess I could say it right now. And there's like there's after something like that, there's a reorienting back to reality. And I think that's also part of the return, right? Which is to say, like, okay, so we've all come through in different ways, you know, shapes, forms, this, you know, not just COVID itself, but everything that's happened in the past few years. I mean, there's just like too many things to even name. Just so two things to name. Where am I now? Where am I landing? How do I come through? How do I digest and synthesize, you know, everything that I've gone through? And, you know, like, again, like returning back to this moment, returning back to your values, returning back to connection. You know, sometimes very literally, I mean, it's part of the moment, but returning back to like feeling your feet firmly planted on the ground, you know. Beautiful. It's like that's what we can do. And to the point that you're just making, Pete, about you know, in Buddhist practice, it's about having a different relationship with pain, right? To make space for it. You know, I think that's also something that, like, you know, obviously we talk a lot about that in third wave CBT and ACT, which we, you know, borrowed from Zen Buddhism. But over and over again, what do humans say and want and do? It's like, okay, but if I do this enough, you know, if I return back enough, if I make enough space for the pain, great, then I'm just like not going to struggle anymore. And it's like, that's the fantasy. That's the fantasy, that there's like this imaginary future where, you know, nothing is ever disrupted. Nothing is ever hard. And it's like, that doesn't exist.
Everybody I work with wants that. It's like almost the first thing.
It's universal.
It's universal.
It's human.
Yeah, it's human. But, you know, of course, also working with like athletes and high functioning performing executives are just like, so when I do this, like, what am I looking for? Like, what's the outcome? And it's like, no outcome. And they're like, well, I don't get that. There's no such thing as no outcome. But that's really what we're looking for, is that there's no outcome. And so as we return, we're just returning. We're returning
to right now. It's like, you know, that's the thing. Well, because it's like that's when I'm saying like it's human. It's like what I find endlessly fascinating is like, it is only human. Other animals don't have this problem because they don't, they don't, because they can't use language. And, you know, I'm sure they have, you know, they can imagine they're very, very smart. They've got, certainly we don't know the extent of their cognitive capabilities, but they don't have the ability to imagine to the extent that we do every possible outcome we can think of, trying to control things. And so, you know, they're much better just biologically at not even returning. They're here. They're just in the right now.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
and I wish, I mean, and we're trying to emulate that, right? That's why you and I love dogs better than humans. Well,
Yes.
I love
Yeah.
dogs better than humans, but
I also
depends on the day.
I depends on the day. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah. I know we don't always want to say that, but I say that out loud
Yeah.
often. It's just
Yeah.
like,
Oh,
because
I say this too.
they're always in the moment.
Mhm.
You know, they are as quirky or whatever they're going through too, but they're just going
Mhm.
through whatever they're going through. So you and I, you know, we are returning to this. We don't know what this is. We're not looking for outcome. We're just going through the process. You know, we like each other. We're makes it easy. We're good together.
Yes,
You know, and
yes.
so we'll see what it is. But you know, I've missed you, and hopefully for our listeners, you know, we are back. This is the return. So you know, we're gonna do our best to try and get out some new content. What do you like? We didn't fully, like, once or twice a month ish.
I think we're just, I think
We're not even
yes,
landing
I
it.
think,
See, this is
I think, yeah. See, I was like, yes, but I think in this, I think that maybe like part of what we're doing is like, we're trying to just take it a step at a time. I
one
think,
step at a time.
you know,
Yeah.
which means being consistent, but also like, that's what we're trying to model is just the walking. So it's like, you know,
Yeah.
let's return back to that practice.
Yeah. So, you know, I've missed you. I'm glad that we're
I've
back.
missed you. Yes.
And, you know, listeners, we missed you. So tune in to When East Meets West, because we will be bringing you some new content in the coming weeks, but in true Eastern form. You know, so you heard some of Nikki's Western behavioral approach with ACT and CBT, but in true Eastern form. Not sure when, not sure how frequent, but tune in. You're guaranteed to see something soon.
This has been When East Meets West. I'm Dr. Pete Economo.
And I'm Dr. Nikki Rubin. Be present, be brave.
This has been When East Meets West. All material is based on opinion and educational training of Drs. Pete Economo and Nikki Rubin.
Content is for informational and educational purposes only.